This is one in a series of movies about these basic fingerless gloves for men. In this movie, we're working on the standard gauge version. These are the various circumferences. The details about the size and construction were covered in the overview introductory movie, which you can review if you need to. We'll get right into knitting here. For small, medium, large, and extra large, these are the numbers of stitches to cast on. Use E-wrap. At main stitch size minus 2 whole numbers, knit 40 rows. We're knitting the cuff that will go around the wrist now. I usually knit the first row or two back from hold because it just goes more smoothly. Now we hang the E-wraps and close the wrist hem. Knit 15 plain rows at main stitch size and then mark either side of the work to designate the starting position for the thumb. Knit this many rows and mark again to designate the end of the thumb. Only hang these second markers if you're planning on knitting a true thumb piece. If you want to use this sleeker style, drop stitch number 3 and stitch number 5 from each edge of the work, ladder down to the first yarn markers, and latch them back up as tucked purls. This is fully demonstrated in the mid-gauge movie. So if that's the style of thumb you prefer, you may want to view that movie even if you're knitting the standard gauge. So the thumb is either finished or marked, and we knit 25 straight rows before the second hem. At this point, we're still knitting in main stitch size, but that will shortly change. First, let's E-wrap all of the working needles or every other working needle using a slightly different yarn. Reduce the stitch size to main stitch size minus 2. Knit 30 rows for the fingertip hem, then lift and hang the recently made E-wraps and bind off. If you would prefer a ribbed hem at the fingertip end of the glove, knit either 14 or 16 rows, then drop and reform either every other or every third stitch to make a purl stitch and then bind off. Here's what we have so far. Where the red dots are, seam the edges of the knitting together from the beginning of the work to the first set of the yarn markers, making sure to seam the 2 layers of the hem separately. Also pull both hems lengthwise, either with a tool or with your fingertips, to get these stitches into their proper shape and improve their overall looks. Now, between the second set of yarn markers, hang the thumb area on this many needles, making sure that each needle goes into a unique opening in the fabric. It's not a problem. There are more than enough openings. The 2 yarn markers are one at each edge needle, and the seam is in the center. The purl side should be in view. Knit 20 rows, gradually decreasing from the main stitch size to 2 whole numbers smaller by the time of row 10, and then gradually increasing back to the main stitch size. Lift the same area that we used to hang the thumb area to begin with and rehang it. Every other needle is adequate. In fact, I prefer every other needle because it makes the seam to the thumb piece slightly less stiff. Then we'll bind off. I like to bind off around the gate pegs, but anything is adequate. And that will close the thumb piece at the same time as we bind off. Now all that's left to do is to seam the remaining parts of the glove together, from the thumb piece to the fingertip and the edges of the thumb piece itself, and always make sure that doubled areas of fabric are seamed separately. Stay tuned for the mid-gauge and bulky versions of the pattern, and if you want a written version, it's in the Warm Hands Workbook, and there is a link for you to use in the program notes.